award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We got a great show for you today. Mr. Don King is also in studio helping me co-host, as always.
Yes, sir, Jason. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, glad to have you and excited about today's guest.
Oh, man, I tell you what. We've got Rob Simbeck here today. He's a writer extraordinaire, be it songs, be it books, be it prose, be it poetry. I mean, he's got it all. He's a wordsmith extraordinaire, and so glad to have Rob here today.
It's great to be here. I so much appreciate the chance to come and talk to everybody.
Yeah. Got a new book out, too, so we're going to dig into that. And it's going to be a fun day.
I'm excited to learn a few things. This is I've just met Rob today, and I hear he's into a lot of stuff, and he's also retired and enjoying that part too.
Yeah.
So he's juggling a lot of things. So I'm excited to hear all the stories and whatnot. He said doing a little gardening and things, so that's good too.
I guess my first introduction to Rob was at the Tennessee Outdoor Writers Association that meets has an annual meeting every year. I would attend that, and Rob would attend that faithfully as well, and we'd break out the guitars kind of around the fire after all the meetings and stuff were over and just trade songs back and forth. And Rob always had some great stuff, and I always look forward to hearing his songs. And we just kind of developed a friendship over the years, and so that kind of led us to here. And when I saw the notice about your new book, I thought, man, that just lines up perfectly with WildCast. We ought to get him on here to promote the book. And I appreciate you sending us the advanced PDF. And since it was so just the day before we've done this, I didn't have time to dig into the whole book, but just flipping through, and I really liked how you kind of set the thing up with air, with land, and the water. Mm-hmm. And so how'd you get that? How'd you come by that, Rob?
Just juggling ideas. This book grew out of the South Carolina wildlife column that I wrote for 25 years. It was called For Wildlife Watchers. And over the course of 25 years, you do a lot of critters.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked to the University of South Carolina Press, and they wanted to do a book with it, and there were room for about 3 dozen of them. And as I looked through the columns, I knew there were some I really wanted. It opens with the crow because it talks about how we used to raise chickens. And if you raise chickens, you know what they're saying.
Yeah.
After a while, you know if Henrietta's saying, hey, I just laid an egg, or if Jesse's saying, hey, the neighbor's cat is out. You figure that out.
Yeah.
And so once I started with that, I started listening to the crows and the blue jays and everything else out there, and it really helped toward this. So that was how I picked that one. And a lot of them were like that, and I got to where I was thinking, how do I divide this up? And that one just seemed the most logical for me. I haven't really seen it done that way, but I had 12 solid ones for each of air, water, and land.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things. It comes into your head, and you think, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah. And I'll have to say, I read the part about the crow in the beginning of the book, and very engaging. I mean, I wasn't surprised because Rob writes great stuff, but it drew me right in because I could relate to hearing those crow sounds and wondering what was going on out there. You know, when you hear a gaggle of them out there scolding an owl or something. And we had that experience, and you outline it in the book about them hassling the owls, and we had an instance in our yard recently where my wife was saying, what are those birds all excited about? And we, sure enough, pretty soon a big owl came out of the tree, and then the crows all cheered, hey, we got rid of a guy, you know.
You always know that if they're fussing, something's going on. It could be the smaller birds, and it could be a snake.
Yeah.
And it's worth, for me, I look for any excuse to get outside. And so I'm working at home in my office, and when I hear it, erupt out there, I head out the door.
So what led you to other than working with South Carolina and that kind of stuff, what led you to want to write more about the outdoors and that kind of thing? Did you grow up outside and enjoying the outdoors?
I did. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and we were at the edge of town, so we had woods and creeks and all that things, and we had tree houses and slingshots and, places to swim and, just all kind of critters everywhere. But I was not an expert at all. So what happened was my better half, Debbie, when we started dating, this was back in the 80s, we would go picnics, walks in the woods, whatever, as dates, and I realized pretty quickly she knew every bird and tree and rock and fern out there. She just knew what they were. And so I started paying attention because I'm following her around anyway. Why not learn something while I'm at it?
Yeah.
And I wrote a piece, because I'd been a writer all my life, but I wrote a piece called Notes from a Birdwatcher's Friend, which was about me trying to keep up with her as she spotted this, that, and the other. And it sold. And because state magazines, state wildlife and outdoor magazines, don't compete with each other directly, I could sell it to more than one, and I sold that a dozen times. And I thought, hey, the outdoors and Debbie, I need to hang on to both of them.
Yeah.
And that's what started it.
Good choice all the way around. Yeah.
What's one of your favorite critters to write about out of this book or not, maybe something else?
Well, my favorite story in here is the ruby-throated hummingbird, because I get to tell a story about one of our first dates. I came to Debbie's house, and she said, stand here on the porch. I'm going to go out in the yard and show you my hummingbirds. And she took what was a hummingbird feeder, I didn't know it at the time, and she went out and stood like the Statue of Liberty in the yard. And after about 5 minutes, I thought, is this real? Should I be heading to my car and sneaking away from here? And at that moment, a hummingbird zipped across in front of me and went to the feeder and drank. And then another one came, and she stood there about 10 minutes. And finally, her arm got tired, and she came over and said, pretty neat, huh? And I said, yep.
Wow.
Wow, that's cool.
That is neat.
Yeah. And my favorite bird, the pieces in here also, is a pileated woodpecker.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're this sort of, one-eyed pirate, yo-ho-hoing bird out there ripping bark off things. I mean, there's nothing dainty about them. You get warblers, and you've really got to strain. They're at the top of the tree, flitting around eating bugs. You got to check your field guide. With a pileated, you've got something. There's no question. You hear them from half a mile away, and you know what's coming.
Oh, yeah. They're fun to watch in the woods. If you're sitting in a tree stand, deer hunting or something like that, and they're pecking on the trees, and they're fun birds to watch.
Yeah. That's neat.
So I know Don knows you from playing music together, and you've gotten into you've seen songwriter as well and that kind of thing. Tell us about some of that, writing songs and playing music.
Well, about the time, 11 years old, the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I was reading science fiction, and there was a guy named Richard Matheson. There was a short story where it was clear that there was somebody sitting at home with a typewriter mailing out pieces of paper that he'd written on and getting checks back. And I thought, my goodness, wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
And then with the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, like millions of other kids, I got a guitar. I had it the next day. I was in a band within a year, 12 years old.
Wow.
And those two twin loves have been there all the way through. And so I had bands in high school, in college. I played in bars and coffee houses and stuff. And went back and forth. I worked for a newspaper for a while. Then I left that and started a band in Rochester, New York. Moved to Los Angeles and did both. I was writing songs, I had a band, and I was a magazine editor. And I moved to Nashville as a songwriter in 1982. And wrote at Combine, which had Christofferson and Tony Joe White and a lot of great writers.
Yeah.
And it was like a big frat house. I mean, it was just a fun place to be. I love the fact that I got to experience all that. But I could never make a living at it. And so I started writing bios for singers. And then that led eventually to working with Bob Kingsley, who counted down the top 40 on 300 to 500 stations, depending on the era, counting down the top 40. And so the two worlds kind of mixed. I mean, you can't throw a stone in Nashville without hitting a country singer who's also an outdoor fanatic. And the two kept going together all the way through. And I still write and pitch now and then. Had a song on the Gretchen Wilson Christmas album. And the two blend really, really well. And it's been a great life. I mean, it's been fun.
So your role with the Bob Kingsley's Country Top 40 for 25 years, I understand, right? That was a great relationship, and through that time, you were the guy who wrote all that stuff, all that witty stuff and all the factual stuff that Bob was saying on the air, right?
There were actually three writers. But I did several of the stories every week, and the thing that was great is I got to do most of the interviews. So if he said, here's Tim McGraw talking about his new record, I had done the interview with Tim.
Right.
And, it was hundreds and hundreds through the years. And I could mix the two. I mean, sometimes I would talk to them for stories about, for the outdoors. And, again, the two worlds mixed really, really well.
Yeah. Well, and it helps to have, when you're dealing with somebody in the music business, asking them about their career and about their other life interests, that you shared those similar life interests. I mean, you'd had a band, you'd been out there playing, you've written songs, so you can relate totally to what the info they're giving you.
Yeah, and I think that the trick with any interview is to be as prepared as you can and draw on the things you have in common.
Yeah.
It's there's no magic formula to it. It's work, and it's just being conversational. It's tuning into the person you're talking to.
I know Jason, before we started the show, was inquiring about, some of your favorites and.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was looking at your website, robsimbeck.com, and I noticed all these artists are here just popped up, artists that you write bios for, and like, man, some of these big names, Blake Shelton, Hank Williams Jr., Shania Twain, and so on and so on. And tell us what it's like writing for these guys, and then also, who's your favorite artist that you've worked with?
My favorite straight-up interview was probably little Jimmy Dickens, because he talked about being there when Hank Sr. wrote "Hey, Good Lookin'." They were on Minnie Pearl's plane, flying from Nashville to Kansas City for a gig. And Hank Sr. said to Dickens, you need a hit, Jimmy. And he said, you bet I know that I need a hit, Hank. And Hank said, I got an idea. Get a paper and pen from Minnie and take notes. And he started, hey, good looking there. And, and Tater's writing down the lines as he does them. And so a week or two later, they run into each other in Nashville. And Hank says, hey, Tater, how you doing? Tater says, got my song done? And he says, Hank says, I decided that song's too good for you, and I'm cutting it myself.
I was going to say, I don't remember little Jimmy ever singing that song.
No, but through the years, I always loved Earl Thomas Conley. He was a really, really intelligent guy.
Oh, yeah.
I love the stuff he did. But, Waylon, he had an office down on Music Row, and I used to get stopped by there and just shoot the breeze sometimes. I always felt really fortunate with that stuff. First, Brooks and Dunn bio. I wrote it for their very first record. We were over at Tree Publishing where they were recording. And I put in there that Ronnie had been thrown out of school. It was a Christian college in Dallas, and he got thrown out for honky tonk. And so a year later, when we did the second bio, he said, "Please take that out. That's all anybody asked me about."
Oh, that's funny. You work with these guys, and then you've also worked with Eddie George. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what's it like co-authoring with these guys and writing with these folks? And tell us about. I think you had a little story about that article.
Well,
book.
For Eddie George and his wife Taj, who's with Sisters with Voices, great R&B group, they wanted to do a book about the 6 things that help keep their marriage strong. Huh. And so to get a book deal normally, you have to do like a 45-page, really formal presentation and present it to a publisher and stuff. She had a page and a half handwritten of what she wanted to do, and it was Eddie and his wife, and the publisher said, sure, we'll do that. You're going to need a ghostwriter. And so I was fortunate enough that they called me in.
Oh, great.
And so I just talked to each of them. I talked to him for about 3 hours and her for about 6 altogether, and then put the book together. And then the other one like that was with Cal Turner, whose family founded and owned Dollar General for a long, long time. And it was the same thing. we did a first book together where the publisher said, you're going to need a ghost, and that was me. They hired me to do one on leadership, and I kept saying, Cal, if there's anybody in Nashville who's got a story that people would actually buy and a publisher would actually publish, it's you. Think about it. And 2 years later, he said, I think I'll do it. And the process, in his case, we went to his place, either his office or his home, and would just sit there for a couple hours and talk. And I would probe and ask questions and stuff. And we did this literally dozens and dozens of times. And then I would write a chapter or a scene, send it to him. He'd say, yeah, this part's pretty good. This part needs this, that, or the other. We'd go back and forth. And then, with Eddie and Taj, 6 weeks, start to finish.
Wow.
And with Cal, it was off and on for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Before we went to a publisher.
I think that's cool for the folks at home that's listening or watching to know just what does a ghostwriter do? I mean, I don't understand that term. Explain that to them.
Yeah, a ghostwriter is simply the person who actually puts the words together for someone who's telling a story. You get a politician, you get a rock star doing a book. They're not writing that book. Right. Very, very rarely, once in a while. But most of them hire somebody who simply interviews them and goes through old things. With the Dollar General book, I went through a lot of old annual reports and things like that. So there was, business work I had to do too. But it's just a matter of helping them structure. They've got the story. It's inside their head and heart. Right. And the trick is just to get it out in a way that turns into a book that a publisher will actually publish.
That's cool. And so you talk about songwriters writing books or writing bios for songwriters. They're good at writing a verse and a chorus, but they need your help to get the full story.
For the bridge, bring it in for the bridge. Need a ghost for the bridge.
Hey, speaking of artists and other folks you've worked with, Shania Twain's name came up a while ago, and you were telling us a little bit about something that most people probably don't understand about Shania.
She is an outdoors girl. She grew up in Ontario, and she used to, for her father, lead logging trips out into the woods. He was a logger, and she'd take a dozen guys out for like 2 weeks, and she'd be the person in charge. But that was literally sleeping in a tent, taking a canteen or a creek or whatever it was for the water supply, and she knew how to do that. And she, I don't think she was a hunter or fisherman, but she ate all that stuff. She later became a vegetarian. As she became a star, I think some of that stuff got washed out of her. But she was talking to her for her first album, and that album stiffed. It was the second one that took off. But talking to her for that, I felt like I was talking to somebody I'd grown up with who just roamed the woods like I did. And it was, she was just the girl next door.
Very genuine.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that watching and seeing her on TV and things like that.
We need to recruit her for a WildCast.
Let's work it out.
I think that's a great idea.
You got her phone number? No. Well, I want to loop back around to this book. Let people know how they can find the Southern Wildlife Watcher. How do folks find that book? I'm
a big supporter of local bookstores.
Yes.
So if you're in one of the towns that has a bookstore, call them up or go online and just tell them, Rob Simbeck, the Southern Wildlife Watcher, and they'll get it ordered for you. If you want to use the standard online sources, you can Google it, and it will take you to Amazon or one of the other places that will definitely sell you a copy of the book. It's one of those things where, for writers, the relationship that we have with bookstores is so important.
Yes.
I mean, they are the ones who will bring you in for a signing, which are all virtual right now. This is, I've done probably 20 interviews so far. This is the first one I've done in person.
Okay.
Every other one, I set up my computer in front of me with my book wall in the back and do them that way. And the good news is that you can do both Little Rock and Charlotte in the same day with no wear and tear on your tires and no bill for gasoline. The bad news is it's easier to sell a book when you've got them in the store.
Yeah.
And you're looking them in the eye and they can come up and get it signed right there. It's tougher. So it's a new world in every way you look at it. But yeah, just Google Rob Simbeck, the Southern Wildlife Watcher. Somebody will sell you that book.
Well, I appreciate you making this your first appearance outside the home.
Yeah, really.
WildCast, that's awesome.
Hey, we've done a few by Zoom as well, and these are a lot more fun. And so anyway, we appreciate you taking the time to come over today, Rob.
Oh, no, it's my absolute pleasure. I mean, it's a book. This is as close to, I've done 22 books. This is as close to my heart as anyone has ever been.
Yeah.
It's just one of those where I get to start off a piece with the things about an animal that impress or move or tickle me, and then bring in experts.
Yeah.
And, the people who work for the wildlife agencies, the resource agencies around the country are some of the most underappreciated, hardworking, and important people that we have in the American landscape. I mean, they are the people who are working on the front lines of the environment.
Yeah.
That balance between using it and preserving it is so delicate, and they're the people who actually make it work. And since the first piece I ever did for South Carolina Wildlife, I've been in awe of those men and women. And so for every piece in here, I've got at least one, and sometimes more, experts helping me to make sure that I've pinned down. I always tell them, I don't mind looking stupid before the ink runs. Once the ink runs, I don't want to look stupid, so help me here. Right.
Well, and I think that's what makes this book so approachable too, just in what I've seen in it so far. I'll use the term layman's, the interest is there, and you've seeked it out yourself, and you found the things that, like as you said, that interest you. Why the call of a certain bird is what it is, and what they're saying, and it's just really an interesting approach. It's and the experts that are great and have gone to school and know all the taxonomy and all the details and those sorts of things. Sometimes information you read along those lines can be a little bit dry. Sometimes a lot dry. But
sometimes you think, let's hire a ghostwriter here.
Hey, we may have to do some recruiting for annual reports here or something.
Ghostwriter or for our website.
Yeah, right. But that's what I find so interesting about your book, Rob, is that it is so approachable and just piques my interest.
Well, I appreciate that. And any good, I think, book or article, it just amounts to an author saying, hey, guess what I saw?
Yeah.
It's coming home, after work to the family or going out to meet your friends somewhere. That's what you do. You tell stories. You tell people what's been interesting in your life. And I think, in many cases for a writer, it's just a matter of getting that on paper. I mean, sometimes I don't know what I think until I write about it. And this was a chance for me it's kind of a love story between me and the outdoors and the creatures. And the trick is that we don't just do bald eagles and bobcats and things like that. There's the housefly in here and the earthworm, neither of whom are native to North America. The housefly was brought here from Asia, taken all over the world in ships and things like that, and people traveling. And some of the most common earthworm species were brought here in ballast from ships from Europe. And the glaciers had wiped out. There wasn't an earthworm north of upstate New York after the last glaciers receded. I mean, just things. That's what keeps me interested in even the things we want to overlook or just look at as fish bait.
Sure.
What's the largest animal of the book?
Oh, goodness. Probably the great white shark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's you are more likely to be killed by a cow than a shark. But try telling that to somebody who's scared about going to the beach.
Right.
It's like you're so much safer in a plane than in the car on the way to the airport. But and in the case of sharks, they became the Elvis of predators because of that movie.
Sure, yeah.
Because
everybody knows the movie.
Because of Spielberg.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Man.
So anything from a hummingbird or from a fly, even actually fly to the shark. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, neat.
Try to do a little bit of everything. Some that are real common you'll see in the backyard. And with the gray squirrel, I tell the story that they're probably why we're a free country, why we're not paying taxes to the Queen, because there were so many squirrel hunters who ended up in the American Army.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And these were people who knew how to shoot.
Had to be good
And
marksmen.
You have to aim much tighter with a squirrel than you do with some of the bigger game.
Huh. Neat.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So do you, after writing this book or beforehand, do you find yourself outdoors shooting at all, or fishing, or enjoying that kind of that side of things, or are you just mainly a wildlife watcher?
I've been a fisherman most of my adult life. Debbie's the hunter in the family.
Oh.
I learned early on that in Thanksgiving Day in Pennsylvania, when most of the relatives went out hunting, if I stayed home, I got to enjoy the leftovers, and I got to eat what they brought home anyway. So I figured, look, it's 10 degrees outside.
Yeah, right.
It's snowing. I'm in here watching Notre Dame. They are outside in a tree stand. Fishing's a lot more civilized.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in Tennessee, you got all kinds of opportunities for fishing. It's a great state to live in and fish for sure.
And I've been part of the outdoor writing business. Of course, have written about all of it. And this is indeed a great state. And it's and again, the people on the front lines who are trying to achieve the balance that you need to do have always impressed me. They were always a part of the TOWA for many, many years.
Right.
And good hearts and good minds on the front lines here.
Yeah, we recently had the executive director on, and we were talking about Asian carp, and how that's affected our ecosystem in waters, and you're here in Tennessee, and so there's always something,
Yeah.
There's so glad we have those experts out there that can.
I so appreciate the agency.
Yeah.
And I thank you so much for doing this and let me be a part of it.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah,
you
awesome.
bet. Our pleasure.
Don't forget robsimbeck.com to check out all his work and learn more about him. That's start there, and then go find the book.
I'm going to have to restock my paper supply at home, because when I printed out the bio and credits and stuff, 5 pages.
It just kept
Jason.
going.
Yeah, kept going. Very
One last
impressive.
question. Do you do radio? Because your voice is great. Maybe we could hire you for some radio stuff.
The only radio I ever did, I covered a murder trial when I was a newspaper reporter. I was probably 22 years old, and they shipped me out of town to do it because there was a change of venue, and every day at noon I would call in and say what happened that morning.
Wow.
But other than that, I just wrote for Kingsley. He was the microphone guy.
Well, we may have to get a microphone in front of you for some more stuff for the wildlife page. That'd
that's
be fun.
right.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob. Don, thank you for helping co-host.
Sure enough. Thanks to Todd for pushing the button.
Yeah, making it
Thank you,
happen.
Todd.
And this is Tennessee WildCast. Keep tuning in, keep watching, and keep listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.